This is Right to Life Radio with John Gerardi on POWERTALK 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Gerardi.
John Gerardi with you for Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for listening. A production, as always, of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Joined, as always, by Jonathan Keller from the CEO of California Family Council. Hi, Jonathan.
That's me. Great to be here during this happy Christmas season.
Indeed. Thank you all so much for listening. A Merry Christmas to you and yours. I want to talk today, as you know, this is a production of Right to Life of Central California. We talk about abortion policy. And there's nothing that was more alarming for all of us in the pro-life community, Jonathan, people who work in this field. Nothing has been more distressing to all of us than the naming of Xavier Becerra to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. We talked about it at good length on last week's show. But I wanted to point out a disturbing reaction to Xavier Becerra. A disturbingly positive reaction to him. And it's a launch point to talk about some of the stuff that I fear Xavier Becerra would do, or really just what the Biden administration is going to do, whether or not Becerra gets confirmed, because obviously if they pick Becerra, it's because they want to do Becerra-ish things through HHS. So let me just describe it. Okay. The Catholic Health Association, which is a group that works with Catholic hospital chains around the country. The Catholic Health Association was talking about Xavier Becerra's nomination to be Secretary of Health and Human Services, and the National Catholic Reporter did a story about it. And the Catholic Health Association basically had this very blasé and almost like positive reaction to Becerra as the nominee for Health and Human Services. So here's the National Catholic Reporter story. By the way, National Catholic Reporter, not a pro-life, well, I think they are nominally pro-life in spite of the fact that they don't want Roe v. Wade overturned. So I don't know what kind of pro-lifer you are if you don't want Roe v. Wade overturned.
I guess kind of like the Holy Roman Empire, neither holy nor Roman nor an empire.
Hey, the Holy Roman Empire was holy, so you can take your Protestant polemics and shove them.
Hey, anyway. That's a well-known historical phrase. I'm just saying. No.
All right. Yeah. Well-known Protestant polemic. Anyway. All right. Moving right along.
Neither Catholic nor reporting.
Yeah. Moving right along before a religious war breaks out
right.
here on the set of Right to Life Radio. This is from National Catholic Reporter, which seems to be pro-life. It's against the idea of abortion, just not like the fact of how abortion is legal and commonly done.
We're against abortion in theory, not in practice.
We just don't want to like make it illegal or limit it in any way.
Right.
Biden's HHS pick praised by the Catholic Health Association, not by some pro-lifers. I'd love to edit that headline. Not by any pro-lifers. Okay, no pro-lifer is like, oh, Xavier Becerra. That's an interesting choice. I feel vaguely positive about that. No, every pro-lifer, when they heard, everyone who knows anything about California politics and cares about abortion policy from a pro-life perspective, when they heard that Becerra was named Secretary of Health and Human Services, fell out of their chair, or like me and Jonathan immediately texted each other over 2 weekends ago and said, oh my gosh, this is an absolute disaster. This is the worst possible pick he could have made. All right. So here's the National Catholic Reporter story about how the Catholic Health Association is looking positively at Xavier Becerra. President-elect Joe Biden's selection of Xavier Becerra.
This is how they're looking positively. I just can tell you.
La, with their hands over their face.
See no evil, hear no evil.
For those of you on radio who can't see Jonathan.
That's right.
There you go. President-elect Joe Biden's selection of Xavier Becerra to head the Department of Health and Human Services is being praised by the Catholic Health Association as a new opportunity for partnership in expanding access to health care despite resistance from conservative Catholics. Like, you're really going to frame this as conservative Catholics? Warning that his appointment will pose threats to the conscience rights of religious believers. It's not conservative Catholics warning about it. It's anyone with two eyes warns about it. All right. Biden. All right. I'm just going to rant and rave if I keep reading this. Biden's announcement of Becerra, the current Attorney General of California and a former congressman, came on December 7th as part of the ongoing formation of his cabinet. In a statement issued that same day, so they were briefed about it in advance, clearly, had a statement prepped about how wonderful this is. The Catholic Health Association said that Becerra, quote, has been a strong partner with CHA in defending the Affordable Care Act and for advocating for greater access to quality, affordable health care coverage for everyone, particularly the most vulnerable. Let me read that again. They said Becerra has been a strong partner with CHA in defending the Affordable Care Act and for advocating for greater access to quality, affordable health care coverage for everyone, particularly the most vulnerable. Does it not enter the mind?
The irony is...
Do the people working for CHA have so little concern about the abortion issue and so little clue, like it's just not even on their radar so much that they can type that out without any like awareness?
Irony, awareness.
The Catholic Health Association was critical to the passage of the Affordable Care Act in 2010, throwing the organization's support behind the legislation at a time when the U.S. Bishops' Conference opposed it. Yeah, because it constituted the single largest expansion of abortion funding in American history. The U.S. bishops have since opposed efforts to repeal the legislation. U.S. bishops have opposed efforts to repeal all of the legislation. They have certainly supported every effort to eliminate abortion funding in the legislation. Anyway, Becerra, they keep going. Becerra, quote, has spent his career fighting for underserved communities, other than those communities that happen to live inside wombs, I'll note, and I appreciate his efforts to protect the welfare of immigrants and migrants, said Mercy Sister Mary Haddad, the CHA president, in a statement. I look forward to working with him to advance policies that address inequities of care in communities burdened by poverty and injustice. How about the communities within people's wombs burdened by the injustice of abortion?
Yeah, it's...
Oh, my... This is horrible.
So, John, I mean, if I can point out, it kind of seems, if I can make a biblical analogy, it's as though you have the person who sees the man lying in the side of the road. You have the Good Samaritan. And instead of the Good Samaritan being like, oh, look, there's a man lying on the side of the road here.
Half dead.
He is half dead. We really should go do something about this. Instead, he goes, you know what? Where are those robbers? They obviously are suffering from severe economic distress. We need to expand opportunities and start a job program for them. And eventually, if we've done that, then maybe we won't have them feeling compelled to beat up people here on the side of the road.
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, I mean, they're. I'm not saying the Catholic Health Association shouldn't care about health care for immigrants.
No.
Yes, I'm not saying they shouldn't care. Look, even if they want to support the Affordable Care Act in the sense of it expands Medicaid coverage and more people have health insurance coverage. All right.
There are some pro-life people that do support universal health care coverage.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair argument to make, and Right to Life doesn't even have a position on that topic. If you want to argue for that, via con Dios, baby. But, if you're...
to literally step over the dead children killed by the millions by Planned Parenthood and say, hey, there's more important things we should be focusing on.
Just like, I mean... You can say all this positive stuff you want as long as in your statement you also say, we're a little disturbed. I mean, even just to say anything of, we're very disturbed at, one, the fact he doesn't believe that religious institutions have a First Amendment right to free exercise of religion.
Yep, which we said in the previous...
He's said that in testimony before the California legislature before he was confirmed as... he was confirmed as the Attorney General.
Let me read that again, John. I just want to read this again.
Okay, so this is from last week. Jonathan talked about this, but this is important because religious, and the reason I want to talk about this, the ACLU and other groups, and clearly Becerra is kind of on this train, have argued that the religious, doctrinal, ethical positions of Catholic institutions, of Christian institutions, but particularly Catholic institutions, and the thing the ACLU is focused on, Catholic hospitals in relatively remote parts of the country where the only local healthcare provider is the Catholic hospital. Okay? And the ACLU has said, you Catholic hospital, you're discriminating against women because you don't provide the basic healthcare service of abortion. And therefore, we think that whatever your claimed First Amendment right to free exercise of religion is, we think at the very least it should be overridden by the fact that you're discriminating against women by not providing abortion. They want to force Catholic hospitals, particularly in remote regions, to do abortion. So,
yes.
Jonathan, go ahead with Becerra's comments about the First Amendment right to free exercise of religion, how it doesn't apply to institutions.
So this was from his confirmation hearing, January 10th, 2017. So almost exactly 4 years ago.
Yeah, so Kamala Harris is no longer the Attorney General. She's just been elected to the U.S. Senate. Javier Becerra has been appointed by Jerry Brown to be the Attorney General. He's being questioned by the California legislature.
Right. And he's asked, what are your views on, what do you think about AB 775? What do you think about, pregnancy centers being forced to promote abortion? What do you think about colleges being forced to promote a state mandated view of religious liberty and marriage and family?
Right.
He says, quote, on religious protections, the protection for religion is for the individual. I think it is important to distinguish between protections that you are affording to the individual to exercise his or her religion freely versus protections you are giving to some institution or entity who is essentially bootstrapping the First Amendment protections on behalf of somebody else.
So he basically thinks the First Amendment right to free exercise of religion only applies. It doesn't apply to, it doesn't apply to Campus Bible Church.
Yep.
It just applies to the pastor and people who go to Campus Bible Church. So Campus Bible Church as a legal entity has no rights under the First Amendment to vindicate its actions when the worship it provides or the moral teachings it holds when the government impedes on it.
Or
according to Becerra, they have no rights.
To put a more fine point on it, the National Catholic Reporter.
The national exactly
as an entity.
Yeah. And I'll note more importantly, the Catholic Health Association.
Yes.
So here's the Catholic Health Association blithely saying, oh, Javier Becerra, what an inspired choice as Secretary of HHS. He's always advocated for the Affordable Care Act. Do they not understand that if Javier Becerra has his way, it genuinely means the end of Catholic health care?
Yep.
If Catholic health care means anything as a distinct and identifiable phenomenon, I think at the very least it means that it's the kind of hospital where you don't murder unborn children. If that's not what a Catholic hospital is, then maybe Catholic hospitals aren't worth, a bucket of spit.
So, John, this entire statement from
spit, by the way, spit
yes,
with
spit,
SPIT.
FCC
won't censure me.
I mean, the Catholic Health Association, that statement, this article here from the National Catholic Reporter, all of this really smacks of that, famous. I'm trying to remember I'm paraphrasing the appeasement statements from Winston Churchill and everything. That is essentially, you're
not Winston Churchill not Churchill from. Churchill making fun of appeasement.
Yes,
yeah,
and saying that, look, you're essentially hoping that the crocodile is going to eat you last.
Right.
You're arguing and saying, no, look, that's fine, and you're basically just hoping, and that's the way this sounds. It's this plea that says essentially, I look forward to working with him to advance policies that address inequities of care in our communities burdened by poverty and injustice. I look forward to working with him. In other words, please don't shut us down. What do we have to do so that we can have some level of subservient coexistence?
Well, see, I mean, you're looking at it like as if they're groveling toadies. I think you're giving them too much credit. I just feel like these people either don't care about abortion at all or are so this is what I fear. I'm not saying that Catholic, and this is an indictment of every single Catholic hospital. This is not an indictment of every single Catholic hospital in existence.
No.
It really is not.
There's some great people.
There are some great ones.
St. Agnes. We've got wonderful people at St. Agnes.
But I will say, I feel like there are a lot of Catholic hospitals in some of these large chains that are multi-million-dollar corporations, bazillion-dollar corporations, where I think they pay lip service to opposing abortion, but that the only reason they don't do abortions is so that they can use the word Catholic in their name and have a chapel. And that if in any way being pro-life were to impact their bottom line, that they would abandon that moral principle at the absolute drop of a hat. We're going to dig into this more after the break. This is Right to Life Radio here on PowerTalk 96.7 AM 1400 and the iHeartRadio app. Right to Life Radio. This is the Soggy Bottom Boys. Well, not really the Soggy Bottom Fuzz. This is from the soundtrack to the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? A phenomenal movie, which one time a young college student, John and Holly Gerardi, John Gerardi and Holly Klieski at the time, we watched this movie once and we liked it so much that we just put it back in and watched the whole thing again. It was one of the rare times ever in my life that I have. The only two movies I've ever done that for are Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And Hot Rod, an incredibly stupid movie starring Andy Samberg. All right. Right to Life Radio, thank you all so much.
John, now this is not in any way to take away the epic, stellar quality of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But could it possibly be that the company that you had while you were watching said movie might have had something to do with the willingness to just rewatch it again a second time? Because you and Holly were dating at the time.
We were dating, but we did just genuinely like the movie so much. This was completely delightful. Let's just watch the whole thing again. Anyway,
I like it.
Anyway, all right. I'm still mad about this Xavier Becerra thing and the Catholic Health Association. So for those who didn't listen to the first segment, the Catholic Health Association, after Becerra was announced, like hours after Becerra was announced as Mr. Biden's pick to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services, and I actually think the Republicans in the Senate, depending on what happens with the Georgia runoff elections on January 5th, I think the Republicans in the Senate may actually block his confirmation to be Secretary of Health and Human Services, because Becerra is not just, I mean, we've talked about it. We talked about it last week on the show. Becerra is unqualified to be Secretary of Health and Human Services and is an unmitigated partisan zealot, particularly for abortion. And the Catholic Health Association, which represents Catholic hospitals all over the country, comes out hours after he's announced with a statement about how wonderful a pick this is, with no mention that he has, in his 24 years in Congress, he had something like a 100% or close to 100% approval record from NARAL, Pro-Choice America, and Planned Parenthood. The fact that Planned Parenthood was endorsing him, that he has tried to prosecute David DeLeiden. The fact that he says religious entities don't have a First Amendment right to free exercise of religion.
John, I think a lot of our listeners, it's hard to convey how radical a statement that is to people.
I mean, like, look, the notion that corporations have legal personhood is not exactly a radically new concept. And the idea that a church could serve as its own entity and could have certain kinds of constitutional rights, like the right to free exercise of religion, that right to free exercise of religion would apply to something other than just individuals, that of course it would apply also to a corporate entity like a church. And Xavier Becerra just rejects that idea.
Yep.
And guess what, Catholic Health Association? If Xavier Becerra doesn't think a church has a right to free exercise of religion, he damn well doesn't think that the Catholic Health Association has a right to free exercise of religion, and he damn well doesn't think that St. Agnes Medical Center or St. Joseph, Catholic hospitals in Orange County or whatever it is, he doesn't think any of them have a First Amendment right to free exercise of religion either.
Remember, this is the same person, John, who barely 14 months after this hearing in March 2018 argued in front of the Supreme Court that California, yes, was legally, constitutionally justified in forcing pro-life pregnancy centers to promote and advertise for abortion.
Yeah, right on, literally on the wall of their waiting room to advertise for abortion. Do you think he would stop and I mean, well, and maybe this is the thing. I mean, I was about to say, you Catholic hospitals, do you think he's going to stop and not force you to do abortion referrals if he could ever get the power to do so? Yep. Do you think he would ever stop? I mean, he was forcing pro-life pregnancy centers to basically give abortion referrals.
And now he'll be in charge
why would he not force Catholic hospitals to do the same thing?
Well, and he'd be able now, John, to do it, I think, through a lot of regulations that are built into the Affordable Care Act. Because as I was listening to analysis of this, so much of the Affordable Care Act, when you get into it,
you got to pass the bill to figure out what's in it.
Yes, and the part of the reason for that is all throughout that legislation, it repeatedly uses a phrase: the secretary shall
Right.
It gives huge swaths of authority to the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
And this is the thing. Maybe it's just a thing. Maybe I just care about abortion a heck of a lot more than the Catholic Health Association does. And that is, I shouldn't be the one caring more about their religious liberty, their religious liberty not to perform abortions. I shouldn't be more concerned about that for them than they are. And this is shameful. And I don't know. I really think the U.S. bishop, I mean, I'm not one to say the bishops need to do XYZ, but like, boy, this is disastrously tone deaf for them to be like, oh yeah, Xavier Becerra, what a great pick. You know, he cares about vulnerable persons and their health care, ignoring the most vulnerable people in society, those in the womb. All right, we'll be back with more right here on Right to Life Radio. Stay tuned. Dolly Parton joining us here on Right to Life Radio. This is Mule Skinner's daughter. All right. Get this good morning out, Dolly.
Wow. You know, she is a national treasure.
She really is. Dolly Parton, everybody. Thank you all so much. Dolly Parton, a prolific songwriter, in fact. I mean, I think a lot of people assume if you're, a pretty gal doing country music, oh, she's just a pretty face, whatever. They put her up there to sing some songs. No, Dolly Parton wrote gazillions of songs for not just for herself, but also for other people. Like, she's actually an incredibly talented and accomplished songwriter, donated a gazillion books to kids. So anyway, yeah. Dolly Parton, national treasure. Right to Life
And
Radio.
John, by the way, this is something interesting that I noticed. She's been, unlike a lot of times what happens in country music, married to the same man since 1966.
Holy cow. Well, good for her. I didn't even know that.
54 years.
All right.
Got married at age 20 and has stayed married these 54 years.
Jeez, that's impressive.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Well, anyway, I won't say anything. Anyway, good job, Dolly Parton. Good job, Dolly Parton. All right, let's continue with a different topic rather than just rant and rave about the Catholic Health Association. Just being okay with just, I guess, becoming the Health Association someday. I want to talk about a debate that's happening in the House right now within the Appropriations Committee over the Hyde Amendment. Now, the Hyde Amendment is named after Henry Hyde, who is a favorite of us here at Right to Life of Central California, mostly because his famous quote, which about how at the end of our life, when we're before the judgment seat, we'll hear, all of us in the pro-life movement will hear a choir of voices singing that have never been heard in our world, but will be heard in the next world, saying that at least he fought for us. It's this quote that we put on the plaque that we give our auction honorees every year. So we're
great
sort
quote.
of fans of Henry Hyde. And Henry Hyde was who passed away, was a member of the House of Representatives for a very, very long time, and famously in 1976 introduced this rider to the federal budget to cut off any federal funding for abortion in any federal health care provision program. Chiefly Medicaid, I think, is the thing that this impacts the most. Medicaid and the various state Medicaid plans. So this rider, the Hyde Amendment, gets attached to the federal budget every single year. And it basically cuts off federal funding for abortion. And our friend, the researcher, Dr. Michael New, who teaches at Catholic University of America, has estimated that this has saved, I think, something over several million lives. Several million abortions basically have not happened as a result of this policy being in place for, I guess we're coming up on 40, from 76 to 2020, so, 44 years now. And for most of the 44 years of its existence, Joe Biden supported the Hyde Amendment, but no longer.
And
so,
John, he supported it up until last year, and then he didn't. And then he did.
In the course of like 24 hours, Biden switched a policy preference he had held for like 40 straight years.
Flip, flop, flip.
Over the course of 2019. Yeah. Anyway.
One of the weirdest parts of the primary.
It was completely bizarre. So the Democrats, now that, it looks like Biden's won the election, so Democrats in the House are now making this push that they want to get rid of the Hyde Amendment in whatever the next federal budget that Biden winds up signing. And so they're having these hearings on the question in the House of Representatives in the Appropriations Committee under the Labor HHS Education Subcommittee under the chair Rosa DeLauro. And basically, there's this debate going on to argue that the Hyde Amendment harms lower-income women. It harms lower-income women by depriving them of access to health care. Access to health care. Again, this is...
Quote, because of Hyde, too many are held hostage to their geography, DeLauro said. In the coming Congress, the House spending bill will not include it.
So this is the threat that Rosa DeLauro is making. And it's actually part of the reason why why Republicans winning the Senate, holding on to a majority in the Senate, winning these 2 Georgia runoff elections on January 5th, those elections are really important because if the Republicans lose both, this is again, not advocating for it, it's elections in Georgia.
Yep.
But the outcome of that election will determine whether or not Mitch McConnell is the majority leader of the Senate or not. And if Republicans have the majority in the U.S. Senate, it basically means that they can keep the Hyde Amendment in. They'll have enough of leverage power, I think, to insist that the Hyde Amendment be in any federal budget. If Republicans lose the Senate, and basically if it's a 50-50 split Senate, then Kamala Harris is the tiebreaker, and that would mean Chuck Schumer would be the majority leader in the Senate. If Republicans don't have control of the House and they don't have control of the Senate, then the Hyde Amendment is in real big trouble. And a lot of the testimony in this subcommittee over the Hyde Amendment is on this notion that it is some of the testimony has been on this notion, communities of color are hit hardest by the Hyde Amendment, that communities of color need abortion funding, federal abortion funding, i.e. need abortions, more so than non-communities of color. Which, Jonathan, I'll say this. There's been a lot of racial theory, discussion about, greater sensitivity to language when it comes to race, in ways that I don't think are entirely bad. I think there are things that sometimes white people say that they don't realize has a lot of racial overtones to it. I think, like, for example, Notre Dame famously, when they started to have a rivalry with the University of Miami, and some Notre Dame people framed it as Catholics versus convicts. And it was kind of clear that it was like Miami has all these black players, and we're sort of framing, that was overly racial, and that was bad. I know I've been a little bit more sensitive with how I talk about race lately. It's astonishing to me, though, that the same people who are extremely zealous in, policing language and making sure you don't say things that are racially insensitive, don't seem to find anything racist about the notion that, black people really need to have more black people really need more abortions than white people. That black people really need abortion funding more than white people do. The communities of color are most impacted.
Isn't it tragic when a black woman cannot afford to abort her baby?
Yeah.
I mean, it just...
I mean, and it's a thing of like, I get that it's everyone's, quote, individual choice. Although... Again, let's sort of note how free are all these choices, okay? If you feel like you're in such dire financial straits that your only option is abortion, that's not really a super free choice, okay?
Choice.
Yeah, choice. I mean, like, okay, if you're in such destitute straits and you're so addicted to drugs that you turn to prostitution, that's not really a free choice that we celebrate as a society. No, prostitution's still unlawful. It's bad. People who engage in prostitution, more importantly, the men who profit from prostitution and sex trafficking, we prosecute those sons of you-know-whats to the fullest extent of the law because it's bad. And we don't buy into this notion that, that's a totally free choice. But there is nothing racist about saying that the way to help communities of color is by aborting their children. There's nothing racist about it, apparently.
Let me read, John, if I can. This is the statement from the response statement from Christina Bennett, and she is the Hartford Courant references her. She's a, quote, anti-abortion activist from Connecticut.
Yeah.
She's with my organization's sister group there in Connecticut.
Yeah, and by the way, just so people are aware, the way these congressional hearings work is each side gets its witnesses to testify on something. So they have a hearing on the Hyde Amendment, they have liberal witnesses, and then they have the Republicans brought in witnesses to advocate for the Hyde Amendment, and Christina Bennett is one of the witnesses who came in on behalf of the Hyde Amendment. So
yes,
Jonathan,
and she was the lone woman, also herself, I should say, a woman of color,
right,
African American lady. And she says, quote, ending the Hyde Amendment and providing state-funded abortion for low-income women will mean more black lives lost, especially at this time when our country is facing some very difficult and appropriate conversations about how groups have been treated in the past and continue to be treated today. We need to be advancing public policies that support women of color and their families, not policies that end the lives of the unborn.
That kind of summarizes it very well.
Yep.
I mean, this notion that, again, this is the frustrating thing, is that because Democrats on the one hand, far longer than they have advocated for abortion, Democrats have always advocated for more social welfare spending for people in poverty. War on poverty, Great Society programs, even a lot of the initial stuff with the New Deal. It was aimed at federal programs to alleviate poverty. That was always the focus of it. And I feel like no generation of Republicans, given how much money Donald Trump spent in his 4 years in office, I feel like no generation of Republicans has been more willing to do something to fund generous social services for women than this one.
Yep.
And I feel like the path to a sort of bipartisan solution to help poor women, and particularly to help poor pregnant women, the bipartisan support, I mean, you look at what happened in Louisiana, where they, at the same time, they passed a very restrictive abortion law and provided more generous social services for women who got pregnant. Like,
yep.
Is it really that hard to come up with some kind of solution that says, instead of our response to pregnant women being throwing way more abortion funding at them, maybe instead we could get a bipartisan effort, Republicans and Democrats holding hands to support pregnant women, but support them without abortion?
So, John,
how is that so difficult a solution to come up with that we can't find some kind of bipartisan support for that?
So the other quote, this is from multiple quotes in this article, but this one from Christina. She says, quote, I trust black women. I love black women. I am a black woman. And I've listened to the ones who've told me they've been hurt by abortion. They've been pressured to have abortions by their partners, their parents, their professors. I've listened to them, and I care, and I know that abortion hurts women and families, and it's a moral injustice. And there are not very many other problems, John, that we have that where we say, well, I hear all of these bad impacts, but you're making it uncomfortable for the rest of the country. We're having to deal with these other issues, so we're just going to pay you to kill your own children because we think that might alleviate suffering for the rest of society.
Right. And again, just this notion that, we're so careful, and I'm not saying unjustly, but we're so much more careful about our language nowadays. I mean, I never use the word thug anymore because a lot of people say, and not without reason, but like, especially in like sports coverage, like a lot of times sports writers, it would be white sports writers saying of certain kinds of black athletes, this guy's a thug. And it would have a kind of racial overtone to it that was sort of offensive to some black people. And I don't think it's unreasonable of them to have that viewpoint. We're very careful about that. And I think rightly so. We should have greater sensitivity for historical things where people have felt insulted and demeaned. Yeah, we should have greater sensitivity to that stuff. And our society is increasingly becoming very, very sensitive to those themes. But the notion that you can just get away with saying, yeah, black people need to have more abortions, and for some reason that doesn't have some kind of racial overtone to it, especially given the whole broader history of Planned Parenthood.
Yep.
What Margaret Sanger wanted was to get rid of certain kinds of races that she thought were drains on society, more or less. It was black people, Irish people, Mexicans.
And that's not us just saying that. There are Planned Parenthood chapters that are removing her name from the side of buildings.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York is like basically trying to remove Margaret Sanger from their own history. So, that's not us saying she's a racist. That's people within Planned Parenthood saying she was a flat-out racist. I just cannot fathom this worldview and mindset where the intersectional liberal mindset of, calling an African-American basketball player that you don't like a thug is unforgivably racist. And it is kind of racist. But saying that black women need way more abortions. Nope, not racist at all.
Yep.
Totally fine. Totally fine. Actually, you are a bigot, a chauvinist for not wanting to pay for that woman's abortion. We'll be back with closing thoughts here on Right to Life Radio right after this. Johnny Cash and his lovely bride, Juden Carter Cash, singing Jackson. Thank you all so much for listening to Right to Life Radio. Jonathan, I forgot last week to talk about our Christmas auction.
Oh, yeah.
Which was idiotic of me.
Boffo.
Our Christmas dinner and auction, which was a virtual event, was a humongous success. We were so thrilled. It raised about as much money as a non-virtual Christmas dinner and auction would.
Wow,
which is I know a lot of nonprofits who had to switch over from like an in-person event to a virtual event. A lot of them were hurting, and not just that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, throughout society have been losing jobs and struggling with their businesses because of COVID restrictions and don't necessarily have as much money to give to charity. And I'm very, very grateful for all of you who have given to Right to Life and supported us through our Christmas dinner and auction. I really appreciate it, including we have some people who won the prize to co-host this radio show or an episode of the John Gerardi Show.
Can you say who that is, or is it?
I think I can. I think Mrs. Delana won it, so I'm assuming this is going to go to one of her grandkids or something. So I don't know. Well, I mean, hey,
you never know.
Having Mrs. Delana on the show would be a barrel of laughs because
that would actually be a ton of fun.
She was born for the stage. So anyway, it should be fun. Whoever it is, it'll either be on John Gerardi Show or Right to Life Radio. So and then the person who came in second place also wanted to do it. So I think maybe I'll let them do it too.
Oh, nice.
So all right. To close out the show, just for this last 3 minutes, I just want to dwell a little bit more on how stupid the Catholic Health Association is. Like, I know we talked about it in the first 2 seconds. I'm so mad about it that I just want to come back. Okay, let me just describe this. The ACLU, and clearly Becerra is like totally simpatico with what they're doing. The ACLU has been waging a years-long, almost like a decade-long campaign now to sue Catholic hospitals, particularly in remote regions of the country where there isn't another healthcare provider locally. Okay, so where the only healthcare provider you have locally is the Catholic hospital. They've been suing these Catholic hospitals on the grounds that they discriminate against, that they unlawfully discriminate against women. Okay, so like the Civil Rights Act says in businesses of various kinds, you can't discriminate on the basis of race, sex, etc. Basically, they say by not providing abortion is a basic women's health care provision. You're not providing this form of basic women's health care. You're discriminating against your female patients. And the ACLU is basically trying to override the claims of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act claims and the First Amendment claims of Catholic hospitals that don't want to perform abortions. Xavier Becerra is like down. Totally down with that whole thing. He's in front of the California legislature saying that institutions don't have First Amendment rights to free exercise of religion. He's done everything that NARAL, Pro-Choice America, and Planned Parenthood have ever done. He has taken thousands and thousands of dollars over the course of his career in Congress in campaign contributions for from Planned Parenthood and Planned Parenthood entities. The notion that the Catholic Health Association would then come out with this statement saying what a wonderful choice Xavier Becerra is, when Xavier Becerra wants you not to be a Catholic hospital anymore.
You don't have any religious rights.
He specifically opposed the merger of some big Catholic hospital chains in California because he thought by merging it would result in less access for abortion. That's why he opposed it. Not for like antitrust reasons, not for any like neutral grounds, because it would limit access to abortion. You know this. You dealt with him in that lawsuit. CHA probably dealt with him in that lawsuit. The CHA members.
The compartmentalization that they're displaying in this statement.
Yeah, and just the lack of awareness to say that, Xavier Becerra has fought for vulnerable populations to get health care. Other than unborn children, the vulnerable populations who can't vote or talk or advocate for themselves in any way. I just like, if he got his way, you could not be a Catholic hospital anymore. Like, you would no longer be the Catholic Health Association. You would be the Health Association.
Yep.
I just cannot. I mean, I can understand saying, he's done a lot of good things supporting the Affordable Care Act, but we're really concerned about X, Y, and Z. But no, they're just like, what an inspired pick. All right. I need Tony Bennett. I need Tony Bennett to calm me down. This is a phenomenal song, by the way. This is from they played this at the start of Goodfellas, I think. Anyway. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us at Right to Life Radio. We'll see you next week. RTLCC.org if you want to learn more about Right to Life. Support Right to Life at the end of the year. Click that red donate button on our webpage, RTLCC.org. That'll do it for us. God bless.